Hi, everyone. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Um, my name is Alejandra. I'm a data visualization developer and former developer at Hearst Newspapers. So that's the parent company of a bunch of newspapers across the U.S., which include the SF Chronicle, the Houston Chronicle, the Albany Times Union, and the San Antonio Express News. So a couple different newspapers you might have heard about. And I was asked to talk about that interesting intersection between tech and journalism. So yeah, very excited to see you all here. And so we can just dive in. So what is newsroom engineering? I'm going to start just by explaining a little bit of what that means and what does coding for a newspaper look like. I used to get a lot of weird looks whenever I would tell people like, yeah, I'm a software engineer for a newspaper. They were like, that makes no sense. So we'll start there. And then we'll go a little deeper into what are the different career paths that you can take as a technical person in journalism. And then we'll end with just a couple of newsrooms you should follow just because they do so much cool stuff. So, what does coding for a newspaper look like? I feel like I've been asked this question so many times, and it was always really confusing for people because they would be like, oh, you live in the Bay Area, you know, you must work in like a big tech company. And I'm like, nope, I work out of the San Francisco Chronicle. So, there is two types of engineering in journalism, I would say. Oh, you're not seeing screen share? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I am sharing slides. Okay, other people can see it? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So there's two different types of engineering within news. First, we have product engineering, which are the engineers who handle the app and website. They're more focused on UX UI design, personalization, subscriptions, the API, CMS. That's not what I did. I was part of a team that's more embedded in the newsroom. So that's newsroom engineering. Those are engineers who work hand in hand with journalists to create costume projects for readers, such as this tracker. So that's the starting point. We're going to be chatting about newsroom engineering specifically, but product engineering in newsrooms is also a career path. But that's not what I did, so we're not talking about that. So I wanted to start a little bit with the history of newsroom engineering. Although people have been trying to personalize what news look like since, the start of the internet, there is this one big project by the New York Times that truly changed the industry and how we think about news digitally. So that was Snowfall by the New York Times. So basically, it narrates the story of this deadly avalanche that happened in Washington state. And for this, the journalist just had an idea of having videos, having audio, having a map, having aerial shots. And so it's actually a really big project. It has 6 parts, and you can kind of like scroll through and see the animations and the text and the videos. And while right now that sounds super simple, right? It's just like a scrolly. At that time, back in 2012, that was revolutionary. So that won a Pulitzer Prize, which is one of the biggest accolades in journalism, and honestly just started a new wave in newsroom engineering. So I would say that's the starting point. And then we get to COVID. So COVID-19, of course, impacted everyone, but also had a huge impact in data journalism specifically. It's really interesting how suddenly people wanted to just learn more about data, public health, understand big numbers that they had never thought about. So that's when we see a lot of newsrooms start hiring a lot of data journalists and engineers just to specifically build maps, trackers, charts to explain COVID to people. And then we get to 2024. And I would say this is the year of AI. I know AI has been around for a while, but this year a second wave of newsroom engineering hiring has been happening specifically for AI. So I actually got to work on this project right here. My team built a bot which basically took 20 years of reporting about Kamala Harris into like this like interactive interface that a reader can just like ask any question about it and then just get like a summary of her positions in literally so many topics, or like even like what burrito she likes. You can ask that to the bot. So it's really fascinating to see how journalism just keeps being on top of new technologies and trying to figure out how to use them to deliver the news in the best way possible. So what do news nerds do in journalism? And I'll explain in a minute. News nerds is this cute term that we use to call developers, designers, editors, data analysts, and product people who work at the intersection of tech and journalism. So there's a couple different roles that you can take within newsroom engineering. You have the generalist, newsroom engineer, which was my former job. And so that entailed just coding costume projects not possible within the CMS, the content managing system. And so that would involve creating trackers, scrapers, building tools for journalists. We also have this new one, AI engineer, actually the Hearst newspapers team just started adding new roles in AI engineering. And it's really fascinating how those people are just focused on how can we use AI to tell better stories for reporting. Maybe they do sentiment analysis, visual analysis, machine learning, AI chatbots, a lot of that work. And it's like very fascinating. We also have data journalists. Those people usually gather and analyze data to find stories, in the numbers, try to make data digestible for the general audience. And then they might also make some charts depending on their level of expertise and comfort with that, with no code tools like Data Wrapper, Flourish, those. And then we also have graphics reporters who usually visualize information that may or may not be numerical. So those are the folks who are more in like 3D animation or like VR or web design, just like more creative stuff. So as you can see, those are all like very technical roles and they're embedded in newsrooms. And we're like literally working hand in hand with just your regular reporters trying to bring stories to life. So if this is of interest for you, these are a couple of the resources that I end up using to end up in this career path. Because I actually went to school for journalism. When I graduated, I just started as a local reporter in the Bay Area, and I had no idea about data or code or anything like that. But slowly, because I was like, interested around the time of COVID, I was interested in data and I was just talking to people. I ended up taking a couple courses online and then kind of like building myself up to become a newsroom engineer. So if you are interested in this line of work, I would say the first thing to ask yourself is, do I like working with data? I would say like even for the people who are less data inclined, you might end up having to create some map or chart or something. So data will always be part of the equation. I would also like find a niche. That was like really important for me, especially at the beginning as I was transitioning from just being a regular reporter to being a newsroom engineer. I started making projects on my own. And so just trying to find good data sources, getting familiar with them, and then coding charts. Yeah, it really helped me to just like find a topic that I really enjoyed. And then reaching out to professionals, actually, and this is like the biggest shout out here. I got into newsroom engineering thanks to someone from Techqueria. I had the chance to chat with Lucio Villa. He is currently a software engineer at the Washington Post, and he used to be a journalist just like me. And then one day he decided he wanted to slowly build up to code, his coding abilities. And we connected over Techqueria. He was one of the first people to even tell me about the whole industry. And I'm still very grateful about that. I can't believe 2 years later, I'm here. What does it mean coding charts? Oh my God, Lucy's here. Hello. What does it mean coding charts using Python? Yeah, so usually I would say like D3, React, Svelte. Those are like popular libraries for charts. But there's also like Python, usually for scrapers. So yeah, no, honestly, all languages are welcome. um, yeah, so here are some resources. So of course, Techqueria, but also like there's a couple more specific ones for journalists into this tech space. So we have News Nerdery, Hacks and Hackers. They actually have a hackathon coming up. If anyone's interested, I'm actually going. It's at UC Berkeley. I don't know how many of you are based in the Bay Area, but it's happening in a couple weeks, and it's specifically about AI in journalism, which I think is super cool. But then we also have the Database Society, which I'm also part of. Knight Center for Journalism in the Americas. That's actually where I took a couple courses about R and Python specifically for journalism. We have the Online News Association. Google News Initiative actually has a lot of really cool courses specifically for journalists who want to like polish their skills, in mapping and like scraping and things like that. And these are all free resources. That's the best part. I spend $0 trying to get to this line of work. So I just really recommend you checking them out in case you're interested. So yeah, find inspiration in newsroom engineering. I would say like even if you're not thinking about transitioning into newsroom engineering and you're very happy at your tech job, I just find it so inspiring whenever I look at work by journalists. And one thing that I end up mentioning on my LinkedIn at some point was that newsrooms are the most innovative startups you'll find out there. They're super scrappy. They usually have really low budgets. They usually have just a couple people, and they're all on top of every single technology. It's really interesting because when I started newsroom engineering, I had no idea about anything. And then suddenly I was designing with Figma. I was coding the front end. I was writing scrapers. I was building maps. And then I ended up transitioning into tech. And they're like, you were doing so many different things. It's crazy how you got so many skills from just one job. And I think it's just like how interesting the job is, like it's just so many possibilities, and you kind of want to learn a little bit of everything, and then you'll find what you want to specialize on. But I think it's like a really great place to learn and get exposed to different parts of engineering. So these are a couple places that I love to visit. So the Pudding, I actually freelanced with them a couple years ago. So they make a lot of interactive visual essays that use data to explore trending topics like pop culture, sports, stuff like that. They actually have a couple stories written by Mexican writers. So definitely go check them out. They're super cool. They use a lot of just like really cool visuals and really push the boundaries of what data and charts can look like. So I love their work. Then we have Continentalist. So they do a lot of data stories about Asia. Honestly, one of my dreams would be to have a publication like that one, but about Latin America and like Latino issues. But I don't know, maybe one day in the future. But they do a lot of really cool stuff with no code tools like Flourish to make costume data visualizations. And then, of course, the New York Times. They were always at the forefront of newsroom engineering, with Snowfall and so many other projects. So I always check out their work. They're always trying new stuff. They actually just built like a whole AI team of like, I think like 5 or 6 people just dedicated to using AI in reporting and the newsroom. But besides those, I mean, most major news organizations have data graphics teams, including Bloomberg, Reuters, South China Morning Post, and even like in like your local communities, they'll probably have like a data journalist at this point. But also you have a lot of data viz boutique studios that do a lot of this work, but for corporate clients. So some of those are the Data Phase and Polygraph Studio. They also do a really like wide variety of work within this lane of like visual storytelling and essays. So yeah, time for Q&A. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so where do you find how newsrooms have set ethical AI and reporting standards? Honestly, it's an ongoing conversation. I feel like right now everyone's trying to figure out what's the best way. At least I can only talk about Hearst because that's the only place that I can fully, talk about. But they were very strict about not putting out content generated by AI. Like we were not using AI to write full articles. Like they were always like AI will help you, get something, but will never be like the full published thing that we put out there. And even right now with like the Camela bot that we just released, like there's a full disclaimer, yeah, exactly, the Sports Illustrator crazy scandal, like we don't want that. But yeah, so they have been very strict and very transparent. So actually, if you look up the AI news assistant from the SF Chronicle, there's a full like disclosure of how we use AI in every instance. Like they even mention what AI model they were using. So I think that as long as newsrooms are transparent, this is a great tool. I mean, like, I think this week the New York Times released a story about Trump. They use sentiment analysis to like go through all of his speeches and kind of like figure out how his tone and narrative have changed throughout the years. And I mean, that's a great use of AI. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be so hard for someone to sit down and go through every single one of his speeches and figure out, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that. So I think that AI is a great tool for journalism. It's just being transparent about how we're using it and also making sure that we're not just like producing AI content and just publishing that. That your team company supported you in any way for you to learn the new skills to get different exposures, or is it all self-learned and you advocated for your own transition? Honestly, like it was like, so I had I guess I was lucky because I ended up in this like fellowship program at Hearst. So I came in with very basic coding skills. I did have a coding test before the getting the role. But it was like just very basic. And then throughout the 1 year program, I just got to build my skills. They were very supportive. But even for the people that got hired full time, like straight up, they were all extremely supportive. I remember, one of my coworkers was really interested in like 3D animation and like VR mapping and stuff like that. And they were just like, go for it. If you want to like start building up your skills, we'll help you out and we'll make sure to find projects where you can start applying those skills. So I would say like they're always very, very supportive. Let's see, what else do we have? Do you have a typical day-to-day schedule? Curious about how often your head's down coding, collaborating, researching. Honestly, like, yeah, no, it was a little crazy, but I would say it's always coding. You're always coding, but then there's a lot of researching and collaborating with teams. I think the interesting thing about Hearst specifically is that the Dev Hub has people all over the country. So like I never met my boss in person. You know what I mean? So that was interesting. But at the same time, I was based off the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper. So I was like interacting with so many journalists. And the cool thing is that as you're talking to someone that has a completely different skill set, you two might come up with so many ideas and collaborating projects. So actually one of my latest projects, I end up building this like home values tracker for homes in California. And I end up collaborating with one of my best friends in the newsroom. And he's a journalist. I mean, he's not an engineer. And so it was really fun that I end up doing the engineering side of things, getting the data, designing the map and all that. And he was writing the story, analyzing the findings. So I would say there's a lot of collaboration, but definitely you're always coding somehow. Let's see what else. Realistically, how does one position themselves for some of the roles you described, especially given how competitive the job market is right now? I'm also asking as a former journalist who's retraining to learn many of the tech skills you mentioned. I would say honestly, like journalism is desperate for talent. Like, I think that it's just such a growing field. And like, unfortunately, there's no visibility about this kind of work that if you do have some writing or storytelling experience plus coding skills, you can definitely leverage that in finding roles. I feel like that combination is not super common, so they really appreciate when someone has that vision. Um so yeah, I would say like definitely like even if you start with like data journalist roles, that's probably like a good entry level role for someone who's trying to break into like newsroom engineering eventually. um, so yeah, I would say like there's a lot of learning on your own, but once you get there, they're always really supportive. At least I've only had really good experiences. I was really interested in learning more about AI and they're like, go for it. So I feel like you just kind of have to like show that you're interested in learning more and building your skills, and they'll probably give you a chance. Let's see, what else do we have? I think those are all the questions we have here. But yeah, if anyone's interested in connecting afterwards, I'm always happy to chat. Um, I feel like it's such a fascinating field that doesn't get any recognition and it's growing so much, and we just have no Latinos in the industry. Like, I was literally the only Latina in my team. And it's just hard because I feel like we have so much talent. It's just like lack of awareness of the opportunities that are out there. So, yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And I just wanted to demystify a little bit about what it means to code for a newspaper. And honestly, it's just like such an amazing field. So yeah, great to know this word. Yeah, no, honestly, that's the crazy part. Although a lot of newsrooms are shutting down or just like reducing their staff, I think that this is just growing so much. They really want to put more resources on growing the tech side of things. Like at least the Dev Hub just added 3 new people in the past month. So yeah, no, there's a lot of need for this. Like, especially if you're on like News Nerdery, it's a Slack channel for people interested in this, and they post a lot of roles, and like there's always something. Um, oh my God, yeah, someone saying I'm the first and only Latina on my team. Yeah, same. So, we definitely want to see more. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me online. I usually talk about newsroom engineering and data viz. So feel free to connect. Yeah, I don't know if but um but yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. I'm here in the 3 tech roles. Yeah, no, I mean yeah, no, we're definitely trying to get more Latinos in technical roles, and it's one step at a time. And I feel like at least my biggest contribution to my team was that I helped build this automated system to translate voter guides to Spanish. So Hearst Newspapers puts out voter guides where they kind of explain, the different propositions and candidates and stuff like that. And they were only producing those in English. And so I end up using like Google Cloud API and a lot of different things to just like automate translation of those and reach a new audience. And that's something that I truly cared about because I was telling them my parents don't speak English and they live in the Bay Area, and they would be a target audience for this kind of content. They're going to vote, this November, and yet they would never have access to this high quality journalism if it was not in their language. And so I'm really glad they let me run with that. I would say like it wasn't even like too complicated from the technical side of things, but it was more an emotional thing that I was like, wow, my parents can read my work. That's crazy. So yeah, I feel like it's not only representation, but it's also like how can we use tech to make journalism more accessible to our communities. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, well, I'm not sure how this works. Do we just like I don't even know how this works. But thanks y'all for being here. Feel free to connect over LinkedIn or follow me on, I guess I don't use X anymore. I used to be very active on there, but once in a while I will post stuff about charts and newsroom engineering. So yeah, thanks for being here. Oh, do you work with product designers? Yes, there are product designers, but work in newsrooms. I didn't technically work with them directly, but there was like I don't know her title specifically, but we had like it's like visual storytelling director. So I would say like that's very in line with product design. That's the other thing about like newsroom engineering roles. Like the titles can be kind of weird and like not equivalent to whatever you're used to in tech. But there are PMs, there are product designers, there are AI engineers or like more like back end engineers that are working more with like data infrastructure and things like that. So yeah, there's roles for everyone. Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Bye.